we are officially in the thick of the 2024 NFL football season, and I am loving it. The NFL is one of the largest, if not the largest, sports leagues in the United States, totaling 32 teams. Each team has its own distinct identity. The Green Bay Packers, their name pays homage to the meatpacking company that sponsored the team more than 100 years ago. The Cleveland Browns are named after their historic owner, Paul Brown, whose footprint on the league still shows today. But there's one team whose brand stands out like a sore thumb. Today, we're going to look at why that team needs to rebrand immediately. But before we get into it, be sure to support the show by giving this episode a like, leaving a comment, and of course, by subscribing. This is Ziggy the Designer, the show where we talk about the world of graphic design and the people that make it move. If you're an NFL football fan, much like I am, then you probably know the team we're talking about today. This is a team that is one of the NFL's oldest teams, right? They were a team when leather helmets were a thing. They have won Super Bowls and they have experienced horrific losing seasons. This team is the Washington Commanders. Now, the Commanders used to be known by two names. Previously they were known as the Washington Football Team, and by another name that's going to open up a can of worms that I would rather keep shut. And it was that name, actually, that stirred up a lot of news during the social unrest of 2020 here in the United States. To keep it short, the name became very problematic. Nike, the NFL's equipment supplier, stopped selling team merchandise until the name was changed. And quickly, the team dropped their controversial name and rebranded as the Washington Football Team before the 2020 NFL season began. This rebrand was met with a lot of jokes, and rightfully so. It was different. It makes sense, right? In a league with Patriots, Seahawks, and Vikings, calling yourselves the football team makes you stick out. But the plan was never to keep the name, right? The plan was to have this name for a season and to pick a permanent name going into the 2021 season. So in 2021, after much build-up, the team announced their rebrand as the Washington Commanders. Let's look at this. Let's look at the name, the Washington Commanders. I'm still not sold on it, to be honest. It feels like something straight out of a Disney movie, and it feels incredibly generic. But, at the end of the day, I'm not Ziggy the copywriter. I'm Ziggy the designer. Let's just stay in our lane, and let's look at design. The logo is good. I'll admit it, the Washington Commanders logo is good, despite the title of this video. The logo is a stencil W with sharp serifs. The stencil, aesthetically, it ties the logo to the military-themed name, and the serifs create a really good sense of motion here. The logo is good. And even the word mark, it keeps the military theme by being styled in the way of a name badge that you'd see on the chest of someone in the military here in the US. Where everything starts to fall short is how these brand elements are used. We're going to look specifically at the team uniforms today because in sports, the uniforms, that's one of the only places where you're going to see all of the brand elements in one spot. Right? So we're going to see how all of the elements work together, from the logos to the number fonts and to any brand patterns that might show up. So let's take a look at these uniforms. Immediately, when we look at the home uniforms, what we see is that military aesthetic getting carried into the number font here, and that's done by the use of stencils. But doesn't the number stencil font look different from the stencil font that we see in the logo? Where are the serifs in the number font? Right away, with this Commanders branding, what we get are two different stencil fonts in the brand toolkit. We get the one in the W logo, and we get the one that's used for the numbers. Now, stencils are very distinct. It's better to commit to one style here so that they don't feel like they're fighting. I'll put it like this, right? It's like Comic Sans is the W logo font and Marker Felt is the font used for numbers, right? There's sort of the same idea, but they're different enough to where they're sort of fighting for your attention. And that creates a lot of conflict in the brand look. It really destroys the unity there. And, speaking of numbers, when we look closer at the numbers, we see this nice little detail. It's a detail that we're starting to see all over the NFL now, especially in the Arizona Cardinals and the Detroit Lions. And it's this faux mesh detail, right? It's tough. It harkens to the days of real, muddy, hard-nosed football. But why is the mesh pattern on the away uniforms different from the mesh pattern on the home uniforms? And why is the mesh pattern on the shoulder stripe in the away uniform but not the home uniform? It's almost as if you had two separate design teams working on the home and the away uniform. And this is where you start seeing an incredible lack of design unity in this brand, because that dynamic mesh pattern that you see in the away uniform, it's nowhere to be seen on the home uniform, or to be honest, anywhere else in the brand. We see even more discrepancies in the use of color. Again, we're going to compare the home uniform to the away uniform. The home uniform is built primarily of this beautiful burgundy and gold that the team is really known for. But in the away uniform, gold is traded for black. But when is black ever used in this brand? In the logo guide, black isn't even included on the color list. When is black ever a main color in this brand? So why does it seem that the away uniform is exempt from the general brand style rules here? This disregard for simple design guidelines is the reason for a huge lack of unity in this brand execution, making this brand incredibly weak, giving it incredibly weak legs to stand on. If I didn't know any better and you told me that this was all designed within the span of a few months, I'd believe you. And guess what? It was designed all within the span of a few months. It feels very rushed. It feels very thoughtless. You can't just throw your logo on anything nowadays and call it branding. In 2024, you have teams like the Houston Texans, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Denver Broncos who understand design and they nail it. So when you don't really take time to understand design or to really take time into thoughtful execution, it makes you look very amateur. So what does this mean for the world of design? The Washington Commanders are a prime example of the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Washington Commanders, in my opinion, had the opportunity to create one of the most unique brand identities in the NFL when they were known as the Washington Football Team. The Washington Football Team, it is as traditional as you can get for the name of a team. And that idea only gets stronger when you remember that this franchise is one of the oldest in the NFL. And they dipped their toes into that idea of tradition when they wore numbers on the sides of their helmets, a very old school thing for a team to do, a very old school design detail. And they would have been one of only two NFL teams to be doing that, the other team being the LA Chargers. And, by the way, the Chargers only do that to pay homage to one of their old uniform sets. So now what we have is a team that has an identity that, as we said earlier, feels unresolved. It feels rushed, and it feels broke. But what we also have is the opportunity to fix it, the opportunity to change it. As of the 2024 NFL season, this team is under new ownership, and now is the best time to rebrand. To the new ownership, it's your team now. Leave your mark on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's all I have for you today. Be sure to like, comment, and share. In fact, share this with that NFL fan in your life. If you're in the United States, you're bound to know one. I've been Ziggy the Designer. If there are two things you need to know about me, it's that one, I love design. And two, I'm very opinionated. I'll talk with y'all later. Bye-bye.